Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I was excited that we could speak about unity of Gaithersburg, on the anniversary that I got a chance to speak about this. Because I do believe that this is a very special place. I'm calling this talk A Church for All Seasons. It could also be called Why I Like Unity of Gaithersburg. Anyway, I think it's interesting. When I mean a church for all seasons, what I was referring to is the seasons of life, not just the weather, but this is a wonderful place to start. This is a wonderful place to be a child. The little child care that we do, and the YOU, Youth of Unity, and the Uniteens, it starts children off with the right understanding of their value and their worth. There's enough of the rest of the world that's going to tell them that they're bad and wrong and in need of desperate improvement and maybe salvation. But we don't say that. We honor them, and we see them as just enlightened beings, and we nurture that part of them. So it's a great place to start in the beginning. It's also a great place to learn how to create your life and own your own power, how to use your thoughts and your feelings and your beliefs to bring forth who you are and what you want. And in the afternoon of your life, as Wayne Dyer likes to call it, it's also a wonderful place to really discover your purpose, to get deeper and deeper about why you're here, what is the contribution that you're uniquely gifted to make. And finally, it's a wonderful place to prepare for your transition. Because a lot of life is just trying to avoid that subject, but this is all the cycle and the circle of life. And people do transition and move and go to another great adventure maybe. So I don't know if you feel this, but I do, that this is sacred ground. This is holy ground. This is a sacred place. This campus is a sacred space. You can feel it when you walk here. There's something going on here. So much love has been put into this place. So much love has been shared here that it just feels different when I come onto this campus. Unity is interesting to me because it's kind of a paradox. The way we're a spiritual community. We're not really a religion as such. And the paradox I was once told is the truth standing on its head to get your attention. So it seems the paradox is that how could anything so lax in terms of dogma be so powerful? Because people who don't understand unity just think it's, they call it sloppy agape. We just love everybody and everything's good and everything's fine. It's not really true. That's not what it's about at all. It's actually quite profound. It's called unity for a reason, and it has to do with our basic orientation about God and about individuals and about the relationship between God and individuals. And that's what the unity is really all about. There's a converse relationship between rules and consciousness. Basically, the more rules you have, the less conscious you have to be. And the more conscious you are, the less you need rules, right? So think about driving down the road. If you were conscious that this road is curving like that, then you would say, well, then I wouldn't want to pass here. Right? I wouldn't want to pass here because car could be coming and I not be able to see it. So because I'm conscious of that, I'm going to stick to the right. But isn't it nice to have the lines painted for you? Hey, don't pass here. Been there, don't pass here. Like, oh, double line, fine, I'll just stay. See what I mean? So they're both important. It's not enough to just have consciousness or just have rules. Rules without consciousness are, that could be somebody continuing to drive 55 because the sign said 55, but it's a blizzard. No consciousness. You get it? I was following the rules, I saw the sign, and no. So it requires this combination of rules and consciousness. And so unity has acceptance for whatever rules you want to live by, maybe dictated by your religion. But it doesn't focus on dogma, and it doesn't relieve you of the need for consciousness. And so that's where the strength is that you have to own your own power. You can't just say, because the Bible tells me so. You can't do that. Because you could do that, but we don't really have a literal interpretation of the Bible. We have a metaphysical one. So unity leans towards consciousness over rules. Respect for and faith in the Spirit of God in every person makes it unnecessary to set down fixed creeds or impose limiting beliefs. Each individual is encouraged to follow the unity teachings in determining personal responses in his or her life. So it's, in a sense, it's sort of like the highest form of consciousness is that you have to actually know for yourself, you have to experience what feels good and what doesn't feel good. These truths should be self-evident, not because something external told you they're true, but you actually have an experience of it yourself. The other thing I really like is that we have a metaphysical interpretation of Scripture. Scripture is very beautiful. And unity sees Scripture as very much a metaphor. It's metaphysical, meaning that it's higher than the physical level. And there's something about seeing something from a higher perspective that is very, very powerful. And can produce just a different opening of possibility for you that you'd never see before. For instance, one time, my wife and I and our kids we went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. We went to what's it called? Oktoberfest. It's all these balloons. It's the most photographed event in the world. And if your kids are 3 or 4, I don't recommend taking them on a hot air balloon. They saw nothing. They were in this basket. They were trapped in here, and they spilled around like dice in a cup. It was horrible. They're screaming, bam, bam, the thing was like moving around. So they don't have any experience of knowing what that was like. But for us, I noticed there was something interesting that happened to me, which was that as the balloon took off and we started drifting, I was very anxious because it just looked like we were going to hit something all the time. It's like trees, it was like, and there was electrical wires, and there was a building, and we're going over there, and yet we kept going higher and higher. They kept forcing this hot air from a gas propane thing up, and after a while, the very, very same things in the very same area that were anxiety-provoking for me just seemed interesting. From a higher perspective, once I got about 150 feet, I was like, oh, look, trees, electrical wires. I was like, isn't that interesting? It's not like, I didn't have that same freak out about when it was like right in front of me. So there's something about, what does this perspective do? What does it do when you take the highest perspective? When you see something from another level? There's things that you just didn't see before. And when you do, it frees you up. It gives you space. I mean, I do this when I would work with couples and families. I remember one time this couple came to me and I said, what's the problem? He said, our son is driving us crazy. We were hoping we're going to have a nice summer with him before he went away to college, but no. He stays up with his friends till 3 in the morning. He sleeps till 2 in the afternoon. Then he plays video games and they're just like ready to kill him. He says, I get home from work, he's still sleeping. And then he's going out. We're going out tonight at 11. And he said he was going to get a job, and he didn't get a job. And they were like, we're just ready to kill him. And he doesn't think much of us either. And I remember listening to this. They were so upset. And I said to them, well, that's really good. He says, there's nothing good about it. He says, yes, it is, actually. I said, because this is what's supposed to happen the summer of your senior year. What do you mean? They said, you're supposed to want him, you want to kill him. Because when he goes off to college, you want to say, and stay out. And you want him to say, and I'm not coming back till Thanksgiving. And they said, why? I said, because that's how they make the break. What if you had this yummy summer with him and you were so attached and we got so close and we ate dinner every night, Those are the kind of kids who can't make it in college. They want to keep coming home every weekend and they miss you and they talk and they don't make the break. This is the best thing that could happen. They're like, really? I said, yeah, kick him out. So you take a different perspective and you can see things that you couldn't see before. In unity, sin is seen as separation from God in consciousness, caused by a belief in a power outside of ourselves. Now that's a really big deal. You can't escape this. Almost everything, because we have human bodies and everybody looks like they're different from us and separate from us, it's easy to think that this person has power over us. But when you take a higher perspective, what you realize is that, no. There's something else going on here than what appears in the moment. There's something else happening here. And these are the principles of unity. We start with God is. There's only one power out there, God the good everywhere. This was the first line of the song. You probably couldn't understand the words while we're singing it, but there's only one power out there, God the good everywhere. The source of that power, you see, lies within you and me. So this is one of the things that distinguishes unity from almost everything else, which is that there is no place where God leaves off and we begin, and vice versa. There is no place. This unity minister, Reverend, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, like Batorf or something, says, why is it called unity? It's called unity because of how we see our individual relationship with God. Not only is there one God, but we are one with God. There is no separation, no need to beseech God through anyone else to reunite us despite our sinful nature. Life is lived only in the present. Salvation is now. It happens whenever we turn our thoughts away from fear, from anxiety, worry, doubt, to thoughts of love, harmony, joy, and peace. So this thing about some power being out there, there's something that could really affect us, and there's nothing we can do about it, is what scares people. It's what most things are based on, fear. My sister used to say, God will get you for that. It's like, ugh, it sounded horrible. Well, part of what happens is we create our lives. And you could say, well, we don't you didn't create this building, you didn't create the grass. No, but we create our experience of our lives. That's what we create. And we do it by what we think and how we feel and what we believe. And that determines our experience of life. To feel this connection each day, one of the things we say is, the thoughts that we hold in our mind manifest after their kind. So, this is part of the law of attraction, but it's also our whole experience of our life is just an outflowing from what's going on inside of us. What we are living is an outer representation of our inner feelings, beliefs, and thoughts. This is what gives us personal power. We aren't victims. We can align our consciousness with the source of everything, and therefore be, have, and do anything we conceive and believe. So there's tremendous power in this if we sort of seize it. Part of what happens is if you grow up, you keep thinking, well, who am I to do this? Who am I to? I can't do that. That's just arrogant or conceited, or I'm not God. But the spark of God is in you, and there's no place that God is that you aren't, and vice versa. So that there's personal power in you grab a hold of your thoughts and say, you know what, I don't like where this is taking me. Haven't you done that? Haven't you turned off a show because it was just freaking you out? Like, this is awful. Why am I watching this? I feel terrible. You have that choice of what you think and how you feel and how you want to feel. And the alignment comes to, I want to go back to listening to the part of me that wants peace, that feels love, that feels forgiveness, that has compassion. And I want to choose that and choose that. And that's where we ask inside. That's where the prayer comes from. To feel this connection each day, we meditate and we pray. Charles Fillmore, who was one of the founders of Unity, said this. I like this. He said, we become like-minded by entering into the absolute mind. In the absolute mind, there's only harmony. As man unifies his own mind forces in the one mind, his body is lifted up into a new state of harmony. Harmonize yourself with God, and all your world will be in harmony. Be on the alert to see harmony everywhere. Do not magnify seeming differences. Do not keep up petty divisions, but continually declare the one universal harmony. So it's an affirmation that we are connected and that there's something more than our differences. Yes, we have differences, and yes, we can disagree agreeably. But that's not who we are. And that's not necessarily our experience. And I do this all the time with people. I'll get into a conversation, and it'll just go down a funky place, usually politics or something. I was like, uh-oh. Yeah, waiter, check please. And but there's a way to take the conversation towards what we have in common. Some part of a person, it's fascinating to me. I just feel like, I know this sounds silly, but people to me are tennis balls floating in a swimming pool. You only see this like little surfacey thing, you know what I mean? And if you're not crazy about what you see, just like tap it a little bit. You get the other part. This other thing that was under there comes out. It's like, oh, hello. We can relate here, you see? But they're not static, and they can manifest different aspects, you know? So the last thing was, when you think about prayer, Eric Butterworth said this, the new science of prayer is not a naive effort to coax a miracle from a reticent God, but a commitment to be transformed by the renewing of the mind, along with a conviction of worthiness wherein one may claim his good as a child of God. What a cool thing. I mean, that takes a lot of guts to say, I am a child of God. I do deserve this. And that this manifestation is something that is part of me. It is me, and I am it. So that second thing, you know, God is and I am. You affirm that. And that unity is always in existence. And the last thing, as far as the 5 principles go, is, and I pray and I live it. I think this is really important. Remember I asked my dad, who was very disappointed that his kids did not become, religious. I said to him, why didn't you become religious? You went to temple, when you were little. He said, you know why? I said, why? I said, because my brothers were in business, and I saw the way the businessmen acted with each other during the week. Then they go to temple and they'd all pray. Then they go back and just cutthroat. I just hate it. It's just like, this is hypocrisy. You do this stuff on Sunday, and then you just slit each other's throats on Monday. It's like, what is going on here? He didn't like it. And so he sort of lost, he thought it was just something you just say and you look good. So that's it. It's not enough to have all these concepts. We said, not just a conceptual thing, we also practice what we sing. When I first heard about unity, they called it practical Christianity. I thought, what does that mean? Practical Christianity. Well, it just means that you're going to practice this. I mean, don't just talk about it, practice it. See the good in other people. See yourself as united with God all the time. Walk around in the state of joy that you are. You have to practice what you sing, or it doesn't work. It's just a concept. They said a spiritual community is about developing caring relationships that magnify God's love. This is how we get a spiritual community. You have these caring relationships, and you're magnifying, you're being this, once again, this threshold over which the love is flowing. Well, promised Cheryl I would talk about this. It has to do with is there a power outside of you? Can something adversely affect you from outside? Or are you really the source of the power yourself? So, as many of you know, Cheryl's sister was killed in a car accident a couple weeks ago, which is devastating and difficult to work through and process. But what she didn't like was she was hearing this little buzz about, that's the curse of unity of faith, See, we had a minister, and then he had a stroke, and then we had another one, and she died, and then we had, and then Cheryl, feel how the vibe just went down. And I told her I would tell this story. It's a silly story, but I like it. Once upon a time, there was this king, and the king had a court around him, and he had all these advisors, and he had an astrologer. And the astrologer would tell him what he could expect each day. And the astrologer was very good, and he knew all these things, very technical, and he'd give him his charts for this, what was going to happen, and the best time to plant crops, and all this kind of stuff. So one day, the king didn't come out of the court. He never came into the court. He was still in his bedroom. And they keep waiting and waiting, and finally, his people went in to see him, and they said, "What's the matter?" He says, "I'm not getting out of bed." He says, "Why not?" He says, "I just talked with the astrologer. He says, today's the day I die." He says, "What?" He says, "Yep, that's it. He showed me Mercury trine Venus. He said this whole complicated thing. That's it. I'm done." He says, "Really?" He says, "Where is that astrologer?" He says, "It's over in his office." So they go see the astrologer, and the astrologer is kind of depressed too. He says, "What's the story with this?" He says, "Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what to tell you. It's right here. I can show you." He goes through the whole thing. He says, this is it. He doesn't have a prayer. He's not going to get through the afternoon. So one of the guys says, "Let me ask you something. Have you ever done your own charts? Do you know when you're going to die?" He says, "Of course I have." He says, "I don't live that much longer than the king. If you look, I'll show you. I'll bring up my chart. I have like maybe 8 years on him, and then this thing happens, and then I'm a goner." He says, "Really?" So the guy pulled out his sword and chopped off the guy's head. Anyway, they went back to the king. They said, "I wouldn't worry. Get out of bed. I don't think that guy knew what he was talking about." And so, this is why it's crazy to have something external to you determine what's going to be and what's not going to be. That's nuts. And you don't want to put your God-given energy into a silly suspicion like that or a superstition like that. I told this to Kathy this morning. I said all these things had happened. She said, "What are you talking about? Poo-poo happens." Come on. People die. Come on. Things happen. Our thing is how we respond to it, how we react to it, what is our experience of life as things transition. You can't have life without death, and you can't, at least on this plane, in the physical. So anyway, I said I would dispel that. I know that was a gross example, but anyway, the first time I came to Unity, I did have this feeling, and other people have said it too, that Unity feels like home. It feels like coming home. So that's where the words to this next song came from. We welcome you here. We welcome you always. Unity feels like home. We welcome you here. Our door's always open. Know that you're not alone. If you've been wanting to know a peace beyond understanding, there's a place to unwind, a way to feel genuine peace of mind, a love that can heal you. It's been there all the time. We're all brothers and sisters in love without fear. You are always welcome here. When all the weight of the world is bearing down on your shoulders, find your connection inside, who you really are. Let your heart be your guide to a love that can heal you. It's been there all the time. We're all brothers and sisters in love without fear. You are always welcome here. Where there's love, there's no fear. You are always welcome here. Anyway, we'll do this right after the tithes, during the tithes and offerings. Thank you very much.